The great chamber of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. Over 300 representatives from different species sat in their seats, staring at the Zorath ambassador with a mixture of shock and disbelief. The words he had just spoken seemed to hang in the air like a bad smell that would not go away. Ambassador Vextel stood tall in the center of the chamber, his green scales shining under the bright lights. He looked proud of himself, like a child who had just done something clever. His yellow eyes moved across the room, expecting to see admiration and respect. Instead, he saw only horror. "I will repeat myself for those who did not hear clearly," Vextel said, his voice loud and confident. "The Zorath hegemony has declared war on the human species. Our fleet of 3,000 warships left our territory 4 days ago. They will reach the human homeworld called Earth in approximately 6 more days." Counselor Narration, an insectoid creature with 4 arms and large compound eyes, made a clicking sound with her mandibles. She had served on this council for nearly 200 years, longer than most species had been traveling among the stars. In all that time, she had never heard anything so foolish. "Ambassador Vextel," she said slowly, as if speaking to a child who did not understand basic things. "Are you telling us that your hegemony has attacked a peaceful member of this council without any warning or provocation?" "The humans are not truly members of this council," Vexel replied dismissively. "They are a young species, barely 50 years into their space age. They sit in the junior section, with limited voting rights. They are still learning how the galaxy works." "That does not answer my question." Skilled's scales shifted to a slightly darker shade, showing his irritation. "The hegemony has determined that humans represent a future threat to galactic stability. We are simply removing that threat before it grows too large to control. You should be thanking us." From across the chamber, Admiral Torvin of the Cathari Republic stood up. He was a tall being with gray skin and no hair, his face usually showing no emotion at all. But right now, even he looked disturbed. "Ambassador Torvin said, I must ask you a week." Yendel made a sound that his translator rendered as a sad sigh. "Let me tell you something about humans, Ambassador. When my people first made contact with them, 50 years ago, we were curious about this new species. So we studied their history, their culture, their ways of thinking. Do you know what we found?" Vexel said nothing, but his scales showed his impatience. "We found a species that never gives up," Yendel continued. "When they face impossible odds, they do not surrender. They fight harder. When they are pushed into a corner, they do not submit. They push back with everything they have. Their history is filled with stories of small groups defeating larger enemies, of the weak overcoming the strong, of the impossible becoming possible simply because humans refuse to accept any other outcome." "Stories and legends," Vextel said dismissively. "Every species has them. These are not legends. These are documented facts. The humans have a saying, Ambassador. They say that they do not know how to quit. And in my experience, this is absolutely true." Yendel slowly sat back down in his chair. "Your fleet will reach Earth in 6 days. I suggest you use that time to pray to whatever gods your people believe in, because you will need their help." On Earth, the news arrived through classified channels reaching only the highest levels of government and military command. In a bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, a room full of officers and officials gathered around a large table, their faces grim. General Patricia Hayes stood at the head of the table, reading the intelligence report for the 3rd time. She was a woman in her early 50s, with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. She had spent 30 years in the military, and the last 15 preparing for exactly this kind of situation. 3,000 warships, she said finally, looking up at the others. Mostly destroyer class, with about 40 capital ships. Estimated time of arrival, 6 days. Colonel Danny Martinez, her second in command, shook his head slowly. "That is the largest fleet anyone has ever sent against a single target. They are not taking any chances. No, they are not." Patricia set down the report and looked around the table. "The question is, what do we do about it?" "We could try to negotiate," suggested Secretary of State Linda Powell. "Reach out to the Council. Ask for help." "The Council cannot mobilize a response force in 6 days," Admiral George Chen replied. "Even if they wanted to help, they do not have the time. And then we evacuate, Linda said. Get as many people off the planet as possible. To where? Patricia asked. Our colonies are small and far away. We could save maybe a few 100,000 people at most. Earth has over 10 billion. The room fell silent as the weight of those numbers sank in. So we fight, Danny said quietly. We use everything we have built over the last 50 years. Patricia nodded slowly. Yes, we fight. She turned to a technician sitting at a console nearby. Send the activation codes. All of them. Every defense platform, every hidden ship, every weapon system we have kept secret. Wake them all up. The technician's eyes widened. All of them, ma'am. That will reveal our full capabilities to the entire galaxy. I know. Patricia allowed herself a small, cold smile. It is time the galaxy learned what humans are really capable of. Begin Operation Welcome Mat. The signal went out across the solar system, reaching satellites and stations that had pretended to be dead for decades. On Luna, on Mars, on dozens of moons throughout the system, hidden doors began to open. And weapons that had never been fired began to power up. The Zorith wanted a war with humanity. They were about to learn why that was a very bad idea. Admiral Crixfell stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominance, watching the stars streak past as the fleet traveled through hyperspace. He was an old warrior, his scales scarred from many battles, and he had never lost a campaign. This mission would be no different. Around him, the bridge crew worked at their stations, monitoring the fleet's progress. 3,000 warships, the largest force the hegemony had ever assembled, all under his command. It was a glorious feeling. Admiral, his tactical officer, Sixra, reported, "We will exit hyperspace in the human system in approximately 2 hours. All ships report ready for combat." Excellent. Crixfell allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Begin final preparations. I want all weapons charged and shields at full power the moment we arrive. Do you expect resistance, Admiral? Crixfell made a sound like grinding rocks, his species' version of laughter. These humans. They have perhaps 100 ships, most of them small patrol vessels. Our intelligence says their defenses are minimal. This will not be a battle. It will be an execution. 2 hours later, the Zorith fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the human solar system. On every ship, sensors immediately began scanning. Searching for any sign of the enemy, what they found made no sense. Admiral Sixra said, her voice uncertain, I am detecting unusual readings throughout the system. Power signatures that were not there before. Explain. I cannot explain it, sir. According to our intelligence, the humans have only basic orbital infrastructure. A few stations, some satellites, limited ship production facilities. She looked up from her console, her eyes wide. But I am now detecting thousands of power signatures. They are appearing everywhere. Before Crixfell could respond, the communications officer interrupted. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the human world. Audio and visual. On screen. The main display flickered, and a human female appeared. She wore a military uniform and stood in what looked like a command center. Her face showed no fear, no worry. If anything, she looked almost amused. Attention, Zorith fleet, the human said. My name is General Patricia Hayes, Earth Defense Command. You have entered human space with hostile intent. This message serves as your first and only warning. Turn around now and leave. If you continue to ward Earth, you will be destroyed. Crixfell stared at the screen in disbelief. This tiny creature, this soft, scaleless thing, was threatening him, threatening the greatest fleet ever assembled. Human, he said, leaning forward. You have courage, I will admit. But your threats are empty. Look at your sensors. See how many ships we have brought? You cannot stop us. The human, Patricia, nodded slowly. I understand why you would think that, Admiral. But I need you to look at your own sensors very carefully. Look at the fourth planet in this system. The red one. Curious despite himself, Crixfell gestured to Sixra. She brought up a scan of the fourth planet on a secondary screen, and then she made a sound of pure shock, where there had been nothing but empty space hours ago. There was now a massive structure in orbit around the red planet. It was a shipyard, bigger than anything the Zorath had ever built. And from its hangars, ships were emerging. Human ships. Ships larger than anything in the hegemony fleet. What is this? Crixfell breathed. Keep watching, Patricia said from the screen. More signatures were appearing now. From the asteroid belt between the fourth and fifth planets, ships were rising. From the moons of the gas giants, more ships were launching. And in the empty spaces between worlds, vessels that had been invisible moments before were dropping their stealth systems and becoming visible. Sixtra's claws trembled as she worked her console. Admiral, I am counting over 4,000 vessels. No, 5,000. The number keeps increasing. That is impossible, Crixville said. Our intelligence said they had less than 100 ships. 8. On the screen, General Patricia Hayes smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Your intelligence was wrong, Admiral. Or rather, your intelligence showed you exactly what we wanted you to see. For 50 years, humanity has been preparing for this day. Not specifically for the Zoroth, but for whoever was foolish enough to attack us. We knew it would happen eventually. The galaxy is not as peaceful as the Council pretends. You are lying. This is some kind of trick. Is it? Patricia leaned forward slightly. Admiral, those 5,000 ships you see, that is just our mobile fleet. You have not seen our fixed defenses yet. New signatures appeared on the tactical display. Thousands of them. Weapons platforms hidden in asteroids. Defense stations buried in the surfaces of moons. Orbital fortresses that had been disguised as debris. All of them were powering up now, their targeting systems locking onto the Zorath fleet. You have been surrounded since the moment you entered this system, Patricia said. Every ship in your fleet is currently being targeted by multiple weapon platforms. If I give the order, you will all die in the next 30 seconds. Crixfell felt his scales go pale. He looked at the tactical display, then at his officers, then back at the display. There was no escape. The humans had planned for this perfectly. They had led the Zoroth into a trap, and the trap had closed around them. Admiral Sixtra said quietly, "What are your orders?" Crixfell thought of his duty. He thought of the honor of the hegemony, of the glory that victory would bring. But he also thought of his crew, of the 30 million Zorath who had followed him into this system. Trusting him to lead them to victory, he could not lead them to their deaths. Not like this. He said this was a warning, he said to the human on the screen. What are your terms? Simple: leave. Turn your fleet around and go back where you came from. Never return. Patricia paused. You attacked us without provocation, Admiral. By all rights, we could destroy you right now. But we are not like you. We do not murder people who have not harmed us. So I am giving you this one chance. Take it. Crixfell closed his eyes. When he opened them again, he had made his decision. All ships, he ordered. Full reverse. We are leaving. The bridge crew stared at him in shock. A few officers looked like they wanted to protest, but no one said anything. They had all seen the same tactical display. They all knew the truth. Slowly, ponderously, the great Zoroth fleet began to turn. 3,000 warships, the pride of the hegemony, retreating without firing a single shot. On Earth, Patricia Hayes watched the retreat on her display. Around her, the command center erupted in cheers. Officers hugged each other. Some wept with relief, but Patricia did not celebrate. She knew this was not the end. The Zorath would not forget this humiliation. They would be back, with more ships, more weapons, more determination. The war was not over. It had only just begun. Colonel Martinez, she said quietly. Danny moved to her side. Yes, ma'am. Send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them what happened here today. Tell them that Earth stood alone against the largest fleet ever assembled, and we sent them running without losing a single life. She paused. And tell them this. Humanity is not prey. We never were. And anyone who thinks otherwise is welcome to come and learn that lesson for themselves. Annie nodded and moved to carry out her orders. Patricia continued watching the display as the Zorath fleet grew smaller and smaller. fleeing toward the edge of the system. 50 years of preparation. 50 years of secrets and sacrifices. And now, the galaxy knew the truth about humanity. The next chapter of history was about to begin. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the most crowded event in 300 years. Representatives from over 200 species had come to the Great Chamber, filling every seat and overflowing into the observation galleries. News drones hovered in the air, broadcasting the proceedings to billions of viewers across the galaxy. Everyone wanted to see what would happen next, Ambassador. Vextel stood in the center of the chamber, looking much smaller than he had during his last appearance. His scales had gone a sickly gray color, and his eyes kept moving around the room as if searching for an escape that did not exist. The news of the fleet's retreat had spread through the galaxy like fire, and with it, the reputation of the Zorath hegemony had crumbled to dust. Counselor Narration spoke first, her compound eyes fixed on the humiliated ambassador. Let me make sure I understand the situation correctly, Ambassador. The Zorath hegemony sent 3,000 warships to conquer the human homeworld, the largest fleet in your history, and this fleet retreated without firing a single shot. We were deceived, Vextel said weakly. The humans hid their true strength. They pretended to be weak when they were strong. It was dishonorable. Admiral Torvin made a sound that his translator rendered as a snort of contempt. Dishonorable. You declared war on a species that had done nothing to threaten you. You planned to conquer their world and enslave their people. You wanted to destroy them before they became too powerful to attack. And you dare to speak of honor? The Cathari have no right to lecture the hegemony about honor. Perhaps not, Torvin agreed. But at least the Cathari have not just embarrassed ourselves in front of the entire galaxy. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Vexel's scales flushed dark with shame and anger, but he said nothing. There was nothing he could say. The facts spoke for themselves. High Counselor Yendel raised one ancient hand, and slowly the chamber fell quiet. The question before us today, he said, is not what the Zorath did or did not do. That matter will be handled by the Council's Judicial Committee. The question is how we respond to the larger situation. The humans have revealed military capabilities far beyond what anyone expected. This changes the balance of power in the galaxy. They should be punished, Vextel said immediately. They lied to the Council. They hid military forces in violation of our treaties. They made fools of us all. Which treaties exactly? A new voice asked. The chamber turned as the human delegation entered through the main doors. Leading them was a tall man in a dark formal suit, his hair showing gray at the temples. Ambassador Christopher Bennett had represented humanity at the Council for 12 years, and in all that time, he had never commanded as much attention as he did at this moment. Ambassador Bennett, Yendel said, nodding in greeting. We have been waiting for you. My apologies for the delay, High Counselor. I was receiving updated instructions from Earth. Christopher walked to the human delegation's platform, where his aides were already seated. He stood at the front, facing the entire assembly. Now, Ambassador Vextel, you mentioned treaty violations. Please explain which treaties humanity has broken.
The scales shifted nervously.
The standard agreements that all council members must sign? There are requirements for reporting military capabilities, for transparency about weapons development, for limits on fleet sizes. I'm very familiar with those agreements, Christopher said calmly. I helped negotiate several of them, and I can tell you that humanity has violated nothing. The treaties require member species to report their primary defensive forces and to avoid aggressive expansion. We reported our primary fleet, which at the time consisted of 47 vessels. We have not attacked anyone or tried to take any territory, but your hidden ships, your weapon platforms, your secret construction are all defensive in nature. There is nothing in any council treaty that limits how a species may defend its own home system. Christopher's voice grew harder. But you know what is in those treaties, Ambassador? A prohibition against unprovoked wars of aggression. A prohibition against attacking fellow council members. A prohibition against attempted genocide. The word hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Genocide. Counselor Marushin repeated, That is a very serious accusation. Ambassador Bennett. It is a very accurate accusation. Christopher turned to address the entire chamber. The Zorath hegemony did not send that fleet to negotiate. They did not send it to establish diplomatic relations. They sent it to conquer Earth and destroy humanity as a species. We have intercepted communications from Zorath High Command that make this absolutely clear. The orders were to burn our cities, kill our people, and make sure no humans survive to seek revenge. Shocked murmurs spread through the chamber. Even species that had no particular love for humanity looked disturbed by this revelation. The Zoraths were not defending themselves against a threat, Christopher continued. They were not responding to any attack or insult. They simply decided that humans might become powerful someday, and they wanted to eliminate us before that could happen. This is not warfare. This is murder on a planetary scale, Bextel tried to respond. Our strategic analysis suggested ... Do not care what your analysis suggested, Christopher interrupted, his voice cold. You tried to exterminate 10 billion people because you were afraid of what we might do in the future? Not what we had done, what we might do. And now you stand in this chamber and complain that we defended ourselves too effectively? He turned back to the council leadership. High Counselor, distinguished members, humanity has a request to make. For 50 years we have accepted a junior position in this body. We have limited voting rights, limited participation in council affairs. We accepted this because we were new, and we understood that trust must be earned over time. Yendel nodded slowly. And now? Now we believe that trust has been demonstrated. We have shown that we can defend ourselves without attacking others. We have shown restraint in victory. Zorath fleet could have been destroyed, but we let them leave in peace. We could have pursued them, attacked their worlds, taken revenge. We did not. Christopher stood tall, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. Humanity is ready to take its full place in the galactic community. Not as a junior partner, not as a species under supervision, but as equals. The chamber erupted in discussion. Representatives argued among themselves, some supporting the human request, others opposing it. The noise grew until Yendel raised his hand again. What would full membership mean in practice, Ambassador? Full voting rights on all council matters? Participation in council security forces? Access to trade agreements currently restricted to senior members. In recognition that humanity will defend its interests, wherever they may be. Some will say you are asking for too much too quickly, Mirashin observed. Some would say we should be asking for more, Christopher replied. We were attacked without provocation. Our existence as a species was threatened. Under traditional galactic law, we would have the right to demand territory, resources, reparations. We are asking for none of those things. We are asking only to be treated as equals. Vextel made one last attempt. And if the council refuses? Christopher turned to look at him directly. Then nothing changes for the council. Humanity will continue to exist. We will continue to develop. We will continue to defend ourselves against anyone who threatens us. The only question is whether the council wants us as partners or as outsiders. He paused, letting his words sink in. We are not your enemies, Ambassador. We never wanted to be. All we ever wanted was to be left in peace. The Zorath forced this confrontation. The Zorath revealed our capabilities. If you are looking for someone to blame for this situation, I suggest you look in a mirror. The vote took place 3 days later. By a margin of 157 to 43, with 12 abstentions, the Galactic Council approved humanity's request for full membership status. Ambassador Christopher Bennett stood in the chamber as the results were announced, his face calm but his heart racing. 50 years of work, of preparation, of hoping for a peaceful future while preparing for war. And now, humanity had achieved something that most species took thousands of years to earn. They were equals. They had a seat at the table, had a voice in galactic affairs. But as Christopher looked across the chamber at the Zorath delegation, he knew this was not the end. His eyes burned with hatred, and behind that hatred was the entire might of the hegemony. They had been humiliated. They had been punished. They would want revenge. The question was not whether the Zorath would strike again, but when and how. And Christopher knew that humanity would have to be ready. 8 months had passed since the Great Retreat, and the Zorth hegemony had become a shadow of its former self. Their diplomats were ignored at council meetings. Their trade agreements were canceled. Their military reputation, built over thousands of years of conquest, had become a joke told in bars and cantinas across the galaxy. But beneath this public humiliation, something darker was growing. Supreme Commander Drakethis stood in a secret bunker deep beneath the hegemony capital world, addressing a group of his most trusted officers. He was ancient by Zorath standards, his scales permanently darkened from a lifetime of combat, his body covered in scars. He had conquered worlds, he had crushed rebellions, and he would not let a species of soft, scaleless creatures destroy everything he had built. "The humans think they have one," he growled, his voice echoing in the stone chamber. "They think their little display of force has broken us. They are wrong." The officers before him said nothing. They knew better than to interrupt the Supreme Commander when he was in this mood. "Our mistake was announcing our intentions," Drakethis continued. "We gave them time to prepare, time to reveal their hidden weapons. This time, we will be smarter. This time, we will strike without warning." He activated a holographic display showing a new class of warship. It was massive, bristling with weapons, clearly designed for a single purpose: destruction. "The Vengeance class," Drakethis said proudly. "Built in secret shipyards that even the Council does not know about. 50 of them, each one more powerful than any human vessel. And this time, we will not target their homeworld. We will find softer targets." One of the officers spoke up carefully. "What targets do you have in mind, Supreme Commander?" Drakethis smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "The humans have colony ships traveling through neutral space, carrying their people to new worlds. These ships have minimal defenses. They're easy prey. We will capture them, kill their passengers, and send a message that humanity is not as safe as they think." The plan was set in motion over the following weeks. Zorth scouts tracked human shipping routes, identifying targets, gathering intelligence, and then, when everything was ready, the trap was sprung. The colony ship called the Horizon's Promise was 3 weeks into its journey to a new settlement in a distant star system. It carried 3,000 colonists, ordinary people looking for a fresh start on a new world. Families with children, scientists and engineers, farmers and teachers, all of them sleeping in the great ship's passenger compartments, dreaming of the future. They never saw the attack coming. Captain Marcus Webb was on the bridge when the Zorth fleet appeared, dropping out of hyperspace directly in the ship's path. 12 warships, including 2 of the massive new dreadnoughts, surrounded the helpless convoy in seconds. "Attention, human vessel," a Zorth voice broadcast over all frequencies. "You are now prisoners of the hegemony. Surrender immediately. Any resistance will result in your destruction." Marcus looked at his crew. The Horizon's Promise was a colony ship, not a warship. They had no weapons capable of fighting off a single Zorath vessel, let alone 12. Their only escort was 2 small frigates, ships designed for patrol duty, not combat. But Marcus Webb had been a spacer for 20 years. He knew the stories of what the Zorath did to their prisoners. He knew that surrender meant death, or worse. "Open a channel to our escorts," he said quietly, and begin broadcasting a distress signal on all emergency frequencies. Commander Helen Cross of the frigate Relentless responded immediately. "Captain Webb, we see them. What are your orders?" "Hold position between us and the enemy fleet. Buy us as much time as you can." There was a pause on the channel. Helen Cross was 35 years old, with a husband and 2 children waiting for her back on Earth. She knew what Marcus was asking. She knew what it would cost. "Understood, Captain," she said finally. "We will do what we can." Relentless out. The 2 frigates moved forward, placing themselves between the colony ship and the Zorth fleet. They were tiny compared to the enemy vessels, like small fish facing sharks. But they did not run. They did not surrender. They fought. The Zorath commander had expected an easy victory. What he got instead was 11 minutes of desperate resistance. The frigates dodged and weaved through enemy fire, their small weapons scoring hits on larger targets whenever possible. The Relentless took out one destroyer's engine array before enemy fire finally overwhelmed her shields. The Defiant lasted 3 minutes longer, her captain ramming his damaged ship into a Zorath cruiser's weapons bay before the end. 147 human spacers died in those 11 minutes. They died fighting, never surrendering, never giving up. They died so that others might live, and their sacrifice was not in vain. Space itself seemed to tear apart as ship after ship emerged from hyperspace around the battle. Human ships, dozens of them, led by the massive carrier Unity. They had received the distress signal. They had come as fast as they could, and now they had arrived. Zorath Fleet. A new voice broadcast across all channels. This is Admiral Catherine Blake of the Earth Defense Force. You are surrounded. Power down your weapons and surrender, or you will be destroyed. The Zorath commander hesitated. This was not supposed to happen. How had the humans responded so quickly? How had they known where to come? He would never learn the answer. The human fleet opened fire. The battle lasted less than 5 minutes. The Zorath ships, for all their new technology, were simply outmatched. Human weapons tore through their shields. Human missiles found their targets with perfect precision. One by one, the Zorath vessels were disabled or destroyed until only the commander's dreadnought remained. Drifting and powerless, Admiral Blake's ship moved alongside the crippled vessel. Zorath commander, she broadcast. You attacked a civilian ship carrying families and children. Under human law, that is terrorism. Under galactic law, it is a war crime. You will surrender yourself and your crew for trial. This is not a request. In the end, the commander surrendered. He had no other choice. His ship was dead, his fleet destroyed, his mission a failure. But on the bridge of the Horizon's Promise, Captain Marcus Webb was not thinking about victory. He was looking at the debris field where the Relentless and Defiant had made their stand. 147 people had died to give him those 11 minutes. Helen Cross? Nathan Price? All the others. Sir, one of his officers said quietly, the passengers are asking what happened. What should we tell them? Marcus was silent for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. Tell them the truth. Tell them that when the enemy came, our people fought. Tell them that brave men and women gave their lives so that 3,000 colonists could survive. Tell them that is what humans do. He wiped his eyes. Tell them to never forget. The news of the attack spread across the galaxy within hours. For many species, it was the final proof that the Zorath could not be trusted, could not be reasoned with, could not be allowed to continue as they were. And for humanity, it was a reminder. The galaxy was dangerous. Peace was fragile, and the only true security came from strength, from courage, and from the willingness to sacrifice everything for those who could not. Protect themselves. The war with the Zorath was not over. It was just beginning. The trial of Supreme Commander Dractus became the most watched event in galactic history. It was held before a special tribunal of the Galactic Council, broadcast to billions of viewers across thousands of worlds, and it exposed the full horror of what the Zorath had planned. The evidence was overwhelming. Internal communications showed that Dractus had ordered the attack on the Horizons. Promise is the first step in a campaign of terror. His messages to his officers spoke of burning human colonies, killing human civilians, making humanity understand that they were not safe anywhere in the galaxy. But worse than that were the long-term plans. Documents recovered from Zorath intelligence showed that the hegemony had been developing weapons, specifically designed to destroy human worlds. Orbital bombardment systems, biological agents, technologies meant to render entire planets uninhabitable. The plan had never been to defeat humanity in battle. The plan had been to exterminate them completely. When Ambassador Christopher Bennett took the floor on the final day of the trial, the chamber fell completely silent. Distinguished members of the council, he said, his voice calm but carrying clearly to every corner of the great hall. Humanity has been part of this community for 50 years. In that time, we have asked for nothing except the right to exist in peace. We have traded fairly. We have shared our knowledge. We have helped where we could and harmed no one. He paused, looking around at the hundreds of faces watching him. And yet twice now, The Zorath hegemony has tried to destroy us. The first time, we defended ourselves and showed mercy. We let their fleet retreat. We did not pursue them. We did not seek revenge. We hoped that our restraint would be recognized as strength, not weakness. His expression hardened. We were wrong. The Zorath saw our mercy as proof that we could be defeated. They attacked our civilians, killed our people, and planned to murder every human in the galaxy. He turned to face the Zorath delegation directly. That ends now. From this day forward, humanity will not show mercy to those who threaten our existence. Any attack on human territory, human ships, or human people will be met with overwhelming force. This is not a threat. It is a promise. There was absolute silence in the chamber. To the rest of the galaxy, Christopher continued, turning back to the council, our position remains unchanged. We want peace. We want cooperation. We want friendship with all species who share our values. But we will not be victims. We will not be prey. And we will never again trust our survival to the goodwill of others. The tribunal found Drekthis guilty of crimes against sentient beings. He was sentenced to spend the rest of his life in a maximum security prison on a frozen moon at the edge of known space. The other Zorath officers who had participated in the attacks received similar sentences. But more importantly, the trial changed the way the galaxy saw both the Zorath and humanity. In the months that followed, 12 species formally requested alliance with humanity. The Villani Collective, with their ancient wisdom and vast trading networks. The Cathari Republic, with their powerful military tradition. Even the Eldari, who had remained neutral for millennia, sent diplomats to Earth to discuss a partnership. High Counselor. Gendel himself traveled to Earth to sign the alliance agreement. He was the first Eldari to visit the human homeworld, and he spent 3 days touring the planet, meeting its people, learning about their history and culture. On his last evening on Earth, he stood with General Patricia Hayes on a hillside overlooking the Pacific Ocean, watching the sun set over the water. Your world is beautiful, he said quietly. I can understand why you fought so hard to protect it. Patricia nodded. It is all we have ever known. Everything we are comes from this planet. Our history, our culture, our hopes and dreams, we could not let anyone take it from us. The Zorath underestimated you, Yendel observed. They saw a young species and assumed you were weak. They did not understand what you truly are. What do you think we are, High Counselor? The ancient Eldari was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. You are survivors, he said finally. Your history is filled with wars and disasters, with plagues and famines, with every kind of hardship that the universe can inflict, and yet you are still here? You have faced extinction many times, and every time, you have found a way to survive. He turned to look at her. That is why the Zorath feared you. Not because of your ships or your weapons, but because of what you are. They knew that no matter how many times they knocked you down, you would get back up. They knew that the only way to defeat humanity was to destroy you completely. Patricia said nothing. She just watched the sun sink below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The galaxy is changing, Yendel continued. The old order, built on fear and domination, is crumbling. A new order is rising, one built on cooperation and mutual respect, and humanity will be at the center of it. We did not ask for that role, Patricia said quietly. No, but you earned it. Yendel smiled, a rare expression for his species. The question now is what you will do with it. In the years that followed, the human alliance grew into the most powerful force in the galaxy, not through conquest or domination, but through partnership and mutual defense. Human ships patrolled trade routes, keeping them safe from pirates. Human diplomats mediated disputes that had festered for centuries. Human technology, shared freely with allies, improved lives across hundreds of worlds. The Zorath hegemony collapsed within a decade, its member worlds breaking away one by one to join the alliance or form independent states. The species that had once terrorized the galaxy became just another voice in the council, no more powerful or influential than anyone else. And through it all, humanity remembered They remembered the early years when they were alone and vulnerable. They remembered the fear of facing enemies they could not defeat, the desperate rush to prepare defenses before it was too late. They remembered the sacrifices made by those who gave their lives to protect others on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Not far from where Yendel had stood, a memorial was built. It contained the names of every person who had died defending humanity, the crews of the Relentless and the Defiant, the workers who had built the defense grid, the soldiers and sailors and pilots who had stood watch while their people slept peacefully below. General Patricia Hayes visited the memorial on the anniversary of the Great Retreat. Standing alone in the early morning light, she was older now, retired from active duty. But she still remembered every moment of those terrifying days when the survival of her species hung in the balance. Sophie Grant, her former aide and now a general herself, found her there. "Ma'am, the ceremony is about to start." Patricia nodded, but did not move. "Do you know what I think about, Sophie, on days like this?" "No, ma'am." "I think about all the things that could have gone wrong, all the moments when everything we had built could have fallen apart. If the Zoreth had attacked a year earlier, before our defenses were ready, if our intelligence had been wrong about their fleet movements, if just one thing had gone differently, we might not be standing here today." Sophie was quiet for a moment, but it did not go wrong. "We prepared. We watched. We were ready when they came, yes." Patricia finally turned away from the memorial, looking at her former aide. "And that is the lesson we must never forget. The galaxy is vast and dangerous. Peace is wonderful, but it is also fragile. The only way to protect what we love is to be ready to defend it, always." She started walking toward the ceremony grounds, where thousands of people were gathered to honor those who had given their lives. Humans and aliens, soldiers and civilians, all standing together in remembrance. "Come on, Sophie. We have work to do." Above them, the sun rose over the ocean, its light spreading across a world that had faced destruction and survived. Across the galaxy, on hundreds of planets, beings of countless species looked up at the stars and knew that they were not alone. The darkness was still out there, but so was the light. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same.